Eerily haunting true stories about remote abandoned locations rich in history. Come with us, now travels from state to state, if you dare.
Be the last time anybody sees us alive. I don't know where she has us, but we're gonna have to killed. Hello? Gina, there is a beehive over there. Do you see that in the hole?
Buckle up, Buttercup.
Welcome to 50 States of Madness.
Hi, good evening. Welcome to 50 States of Madness.
How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good.
We are in the beautiful state of Texas this evening.
We are.
So you can see we don't have our usual background.
Yeah.
I'm Shannon, by the way.
I'm Gina.
And we are here visiting my middle daughter's home. She just recently moved to Houston, Texas. And we decided to visit some locations that we were really wanting to see. Yeah, actually, it was a busy day today. Today, we are going to talk about Andrea Yates, the mother who in 2001 drowned 4 of her children.
5.
All 5 in the bathtub? I thought 4 in the bathtub, but maybe all 5 in the bathtub.
Yeah.
So, So
it's a sad story.
It is when you start getting into it, because at first when you hear about it, you think
you're just touching the surface of it. There's so much more.
And you're pissed off at the mom, Andrea. Like, your first reaction is, what the hell? Like, she killed 5 of her kids.
Yeah. Why wasn't she sentenced to death?
Why is she still breathing? Mm-hmm. But we'll get into the
deeper
details.
you get into it, it's really a sad story. And the more that I, like you said in the beginning, I think most people are familiar with the name Andrea Yates, and you just know, the surface level story, and that is everybody's first reaction is just like, how could she do this? And that's what I thought too. I just thought, oh man. But then once I started researching and just reading everything, like, what a sad story. Like, it's heartbreaking. It really, really is for everybody. Obviously the kids, but for her. Yeah.
You just start feeling for her and everything that she went through and what led up to it. And we're obviously going to go into those details.
Yeah, and this episode touches, on a lot of hard things. But one thing I think that it touches on that people just don't pay enough attention to is mental health.
Yes. And
I think with this case, a lot of things came to the surface as far as, postpartum, what women go through after having children. And it's so important to keep on top of your mental health. Everybody's always thinking about, I have to go get a physical and I have to get,
mammogram.
Everything and all of this. And that's so important. But at the same time, your mental health is so much more important, because without your mental health, it's, none of the other stuff really matters.
And I think after we go through the story, we'll hear how important it is to listen to your spouse.
Yeah.
And to pay attention to the signs of postpartum and what that can entail, and not just thinking that it's just temporary, or it can get fixed on its own, or, she's just acting crazy, And,
I think too, because I know when I had my son, and that was 31 years ago, I literally went into the hospital, and from the time I had him, I labored for a long time, but from the time that I actually gave birth to him till the time I went home was like less than 24 hours. Like, you go in, you have a baby, and they try to kick you out. And I think that just makes people think like, oh, okay, she had the baby, she's good. Like, not even trying to process all the hormones and just everything that your body goes through, not even during the 9 months of pregnancy. It almost starts when you give birth, because that's when everything just starts to just, it can, thankfully I didn't suffer from any postpartum, but I know so many people that have, and it could be, sometimes not so serious, but a lot of times, like, the person going through it, I don't think they realize what's happening to them. You know, I think it's a topic that a lot of people just either don't take seriously or it's just not talked about enough.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So
Andrea Yates is from Houston.
She is, yes.
From this area. And so I think we're going to talk about just kind of, you know, what led
I'm just
up
going to
to
talk
this.
about just a little. I'm just going to touch a little bit maybe on her, just on her teenage years. It was said that she always struggled with mental health. She suffered from bulimia as a teenager, suicidal ideation. And then as an adult, she was diagnosed with depression, delusional thinking, and schizophrenia. So it sounds like...
Yep, but it's so funny
because... a whole ball of stuff going on there.
But on the other hand, she was a class valedictorian. Mm-hmm. She was a captain of her swim team.
Yeah.
She was an officer in the National Honor Society. So you see this contrast, mm-hmm. you know, of this, you know, the mental health issues, but yet she's successful.
Yeah, and I think...
in those years, so...
You know, if treated, I think one can live, you know, a pretty normal life if it's treated. But again, you know, I think a lot of people struggle with taking their medication. And like you said, you know, we were talking earlier, once somebody, and I think this happens with, you know, all kinds of medication, even antibiotics. Like you go to the doctor feeling sick and you take your antibiotics for 2 days and you're like, oh, I feel good, I'm going to stop taking it. You know,
you just don't continue it, whatever the reason. Yeah.
You know, oh, I feel fine, so I must be better. And so I feel like, you know,
and that's one of the worst things you can do.
Maybe a lot of people do that too. Like mentally they start to feel better and, you know, maybe mood swings and everything starts to even out. Oh, I'm good now, I can stop taking it.
Or they might just forget to take it because you're so happy. You're like, mm-hmm. I'm good. You know, you don't think about it because you only think about taking medicine when you're sick.
When you don't feel good.
Yeah, when you don't feel good.
How can I fix this?
Yeah.
How can I feel better?
But once you're feeling better, you really don't think like, oh, every day I need to take this.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's a hard thing. And I think the fact that it affects everybody so differently too, there's probably no two cases that are alike, you know? And the medications don't make you feel good. The side effects are almost worse than what you're treating
sometimes,
half the time.
Yeah.
You know? So it's...
Sometimes the side effects give you the depression. On some of the medication.
When you're treating depression.
Yeah.
How can
I know.
You know?
That doesn't make sense sometimes.
Yeah. So it's rough. It's really rough. So...
Yeah. And she was pretty smart because she went on to college, university, mm-hmm. nursing school.
Yeah. She was an RN.
So
worked at a hospital.
So that's somebody in the medical field already too. Yeah. So
and they say
how much was she
that
aware?
Nurses and doctors are the worst patients. You know?
Yeah.
And so, but who knows? You know, like dealing with just dealing with one. Like just take schizophrenia for instance. You know, that in itself is something huge to tackle. But then you know, depression on top of that, bulimia on top of that. Like that's just a recipe for disaster, you know? Like there's so many things to treat and I can't even imagine having to suffer through all of that, you know? So Andrea met her husband, Russell, who goes by Rusty, in 1989, and they married in April of 93. So sounds like they dated for a couple years and then got married. And when they got married, they vowed to have as many children as possible.
It sounds like a lot of people who are very religious.
Mm-hmm. And
they leave it up to God.
And they were both said to have been very, very, very religious. Before meeting each other, they were both very religious and continued to be throughout their marriage. So over the next 7 years, they had 5 children in total, 4 boys and 1 girl.
In 7 years. Mm-hmm. Wow.
So that was basically like, she was pregnant
almost
for 7 years.
Yeah, 7 years.
Because, you know, you figure...
You have it, you take a little bit of a break, but then you get pregnant 9 months to hold the baby. Yeah.
It's like being constantly pregnant. And each one of their children were named after a biblical figure. They had Noah, John, Paul, Luke, and then the last baby was a little girl. Her name was Mary. So after she had each child, her postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis continued to just gradually get worse and worse.
So did she have it even after the first one?
It kind of sounds like it, but I think maybe like just for a short period of time, and
she
then it went
struggling.
away. But I feel like, you know, like you said, for 7 years, she was basically just pregnant.
Yeah.
The whole time. So it sounds like after, you know, each child, her postpartum just continually, gradually got worse. But she had become dangerously influenced by the religious teachings of a man named Michael Warrenecki. And I don't know if I'm saying that right, but
it sounds like you are.
I believe that's how you say it. And this was somebody that her husband Russell had met in college.
This man was doing tours at universities. He was a missionary.
Yeah.
So he was kind of like preaching about Jesus, and he'd go around to universities. And I guess Rusty had picked up some literature at one of his, you know, I don't want to say conferences, but like one of his, teachings or tours of the universities. And so he had picked up some of his literature. And after he met Andrea, he introduced Andrea to Warrenecki, because they kind of kept in touch via email and stuff every once in a while.
Right. So at one point, they lived in a camper that they purchased from Warrenecki, and Andrea was doing homeschooling. She was homeschooling her kids out of this camper. So it sounds like they kind of lived a simple life.
Yeah.
She was also known, which I read, like as a supermom. Through all of her, you know, battles with mental health and everything, she was, you know, I saw an interview with, I think, one of her friends or somebody, and just said, like, this would be nothing that I would ever know her to do. She was a super mom. Her kids came first. She is just, you know,
that's what she was known for. She was a really good mom.
Yeah, that her kids came before anyone else. So she was homeschooling her kids out of this camper. And then in 1999, after having Luke, she was given a medication called trazodone. And I think this was where maybe they started to treat some of her depression or, you know, different things that she was going through postpartum. And
yeah, I think she was like kind of in and out of like inpatient treatment, and then she'd be released. And
yeah, it sounds like this is kind of where her battle really, really, really started. And so she intentionally in 1999 overdosed on trazodone, and she was in a coma for 10 days. And then after being released, her husband Rusty found her holding a knife to her throat, pleading to die. We have a guest, a special guest.
This is Kovu, my daughter's cat, and he's very curious right now as to what's happening in his house. Yeah. So we're just going to keep talking, and he's just going to keep exploring.
Yeah.
There we go.
There's two of them roaming around here. He has something to say.
He'll get very disinterested very quickly, so not going to worry about him too much.
So it sounds like at this point now, like she's intentionally overdosed, and, you know, her husband has caught her trying to kill herself. And this is when I think things like really, really start to spiral from her. And so something that I had read that she learned and from this Warrenecki guy was that women derived from sin, and that hellbound mothers would see her children burn in hell. So that just kind of goes to show you the kind of stuff that this guy was preaching to people.
And because she suffered from schizophrenia and some psychosis, you know, sometimes when you hear stuff like that, you take it very literal.
Yeah. And and not to say, you know, we're not here to judge anybody or to say that this man is responsible for her doing this.
Not at all.
But I think the combination of her mental health issues on top of, you know, all these, you know, religious people that she was surrounded with preaching this kind of stuff to her, feeding her this, I think it was just a bad combination of things, unfortunately.
And I think people with schizophrenia, it's very common for them to see religion, like to be very drawn to it and take the word of the Bible and the preachings very literal. And so a lot of them claim to see Jesus and to be Jesus sometimes, you know, so.
And I think that's the case with this guy, right?
Yes. Oh, well, yeah. He claimed to have, during when he was in college, to have actually seen Jesus. And so I just think with that, all that combination of all that and her with the schizophrenia, it's just, you know, she's taking all this in literally, that she has these children that might not be going to heaven, and it could be all because of her.
Yeah, and that's exactly, you know, that's exactly what she believed. She believed her kids' souls were in danger, and by killing them, she would save them. So
being a super mom, she's thinking,
I got to
save my kids. I'm going to be the best mom ever. Yeah.
And it's,
And we're not making excuses for what she did. We're just laying out kind of like the facts of what happened and what was going on at the time.
And it says that, and she also was asked, you know, after she took these pills and was in this coma, she was asked, you know, why did you attempt suicide? And she said, because she didn't want her kids. She didn't want to hurt her kids. And she almost knew that she was having, she didn't want to have, she felt like the only way to save them was to hurt them, and she didn't want to hurt them. So in order to do that, she would have to kill herself to not have to do that, you know? And I feel like that's just like, you just literally see somebody start to spiral, and I can't imagine being in a brain like that.
Yeah. Because I know they have bouts of clarity.
Yeah.
And just because I know that the law says, like, you know, because if you know right from wrong, you know, you're automatically, you're not insane. But sometimes insane people have sane moments.
Absolutely.
It's not a constant insanity.
No.
For a lot of them. And that's where the struggle is. And that's why a lot of them try to commit suicide. And it's just, Yeah,
it's so hard. It's so hard. So in March of 2001, it sounds like she was devastated by the loss of her father, which obviously is completely devastating. It doesn't say how or whatever. Don't know if he was sick, if it was tragic, if it was, you know, fast or whatever. But at that point, it says that she turned to scripture, which I'm not sure if that was a good or a bad thing. But then she also began engaging in self-mutilation and refused to feed her daughter. So at this point, her daughter was, you know, when all the kids were murdered, her little girl was only 6 months old.
So she was
her daughter,
baby.
Yeah. So her daughter was, you know,
dependent.
Yes. So it says that she just, you know, she refused to feed her. So during this time, she was again hospitalized many, many times. And it sounds like they had, you know, wanted to try another medication for her. And I don't know how many times from, you know, teenage years to adulthood she was on medication. But I know that she was also, you know, taken off of the trazodone because of pregnancy. And then probably at some point during this time when she wasn't pregnant, they put her back on medication, and they put her on Haldol, which is an antipsychotic drug. And there's kind of conflicting stories about why she stopped taking it. There's some reports that say that her doctor actually took her off of the medication. And then I've also read some things that say she stopped on her own.
Yeah.
But
she was having her daughter, she was pregnant.
Yeah.
And she just, but the last time
that she stopped taking it, it sounds like around June 3rd or 4th of 2001, she stopped taking this medication. And then on the morning of June 20th is when she committed these murders. After saying goodbye to her husband, Andrea Yates prepared cereal for 4 of her eldest boys. Then she took her 6-month-old Mary to the bathtub, which she had filled with 9 inches of cold water, and drowned her, leaving her body floating in the tub. Then she returned to the kitchen, and she, beginning with the next youngest, systematically killed the rest, with Mary still visible, in order of age, and laid their bodies on the bed. Noah, the eldest, tried to run when he saw his lifeless sister, and she ended up catching him. So I think he came in and was like, what's happening?
He turned
like,
around and tried to run away.
Why is my little sister, what's going on? And I also read that she, in the morning, had put their dog, they had a dog, and she put the dog in the kennel so he wouldn't be in the way. Because obviously, like, if anybody has pets, if there's anything like this going on, a dog is going to obviously try to intercept all of this, you know? Yeah. So I think she tried to stop that from happening.
Andrea, can you tell me your full and complete name?
Andrea Yates.
How old are you?
36.
And what's your home address?
942 Beachcomber, Houston, Texas, 77062.
Okay. And you and I have been talking for a while, right?
Yes.
You understand your rights?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to read them to you again for the purposes of this recording, okay?
Okay.
And you have a right to remain silent, not to make any statement at all, and that any statement you make may be used against you and probably will be used against you at your trial. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Any statement you make may be used as evidence against you in court. Do you understand that?
Yes.
You have a right to have a lawyer present to advise you prior to and during any questioning. Do you understand that?
Yes.
If you are unable to employ a lawyer, you have a right to have a lawyer appointed to advise you prior to and during any questioning. Do you understand that?
Yes.
And you have a right to terminate this interview at any time. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. You've been treated for depression, is that right?
Yes.
And who's your current doctor?
Dr. Said.
And the last time you saw him?
Two days ago.
Okay. This morning, what time is it that you got out of bed this morning?
About 8:10.
Okay. And who in your household was awake at that time?
My husband, Mary, Luke, and Paul.
Okay. And what time does Rusty leave for work?
He left about 9.
And by the time Rusty left, were all your children awake at that time?
Yes.
Okay. What was going on in the household at that time? Were they eating breakfast?
Yes.
Or what?
Yes.
What were they having?
Cereal.
Is that what you had as well?
Yes.
And Rusty left. You filled the bathtub with water, is that correct?
Yes.
And how many bathtubs are in your home?
1.
Okay. So it's just the master bath, I guess you would call it?
Yes.
Okay, is it a regular sized bathtub or is it a big one?
Regular size.
How far did you fill it?
About 3 inches from the top.
About 3 inches from the top, huh? After you drew the bath water, what was your intent? What were you about to do?
Drown the children.
Once she kind of started to spiral towards the end, the doctors had told her husband, do not, whatever you do not leave her alone with the kids. Like, not for any time at all. Like, it's not a good thing. And so on that morning, he left at around 8:30, and about 9:30, his mom was supposed to come to relieve her, and take care of the kids so she could do, whatever it is. Or maybe, who knows? Maybe she still parented them, but she just, needed some supervision and needed somebody there with her. So at this time, this literally happened within that hour of him leaving before his mom got there. And she called 911 and she reported, you know, that she needed help. They asked if she was hurt. She said that, you know, she needed the cops. They asked if she needed an ambulance. And at first she says no, I believe. And then she says, yeah, send an ambulance. But then she hangs up with 911 and then calls her husband and tells her husband to come home. And I think at that point he probably knew something's not right. This is not going good.
What's your name? What's the problem? I just need him to come. Is your husband there? No. Well, what's the problem? I need him to come. I need to know why we're coming, ma'am. Is he there standing next to you? She? Are you having disturbance? Are you ill or what? Yes, I'm ill. You need an ambulance? No, I need a police officer. Send an ambulance.
She admitted right away
that she did it. She knew
exactly what she did. And I think that the fact that she called 911 and reported this was a big thing in court. They made a big thing about this because, you know, again, going back to if you can
what's the reason?
Yeah. She obviously knew she did something wrong if she called for help.
So therefore she couldn't be insane, which I don't think that's not entirely true.
No,
all the time.
No, I definitely, I feel like she, again, like you said, had bouts of sanity.
Yeah.
Through her whole life, I'm sure. So, it went to trial, and in 2002, she was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison. And then in 2006, her conviction was overturned in an appeal after a psychiatrist testimony was found to be false. So he testified that the murders were similar to that of a Law and Order episode.
Yes.
Which she was supposedly like an avid watcher. And so he was saying that, you know, he led the jury to believe that
she watched this episode.
She kind of had a blueprint for what she did.
Yeah.
You know, she watched the episode and now this is what I'm going to carry out, basically. But then the psychiatrist later said that his testimony was false and that he actually got two of these episodes confused and that his testimony was false. So,
yeah, they even stated that episode actually never existed.
Right.
Like there was no Law and Order episode that had that storyline.
Yeah. So that was clearly, you know, what he led the jury to believe. Mm-hmm. And so therefore she was convicted of capital murder. And then the appellate judge believed that, you know, since he influenced the jury, that she was then, her sentence, you know, was overturned and she was found not guilty due to insanity. So she was transferred to a mental institution. Where was that? Where was the first one that she was at?
North Texas. It was the North Texas State Hospital, Vernon campus.
Okay. And that sounds like it's a little...
It was more secure.
A little higher security. Where she's at now is in a city called Kerrville, in Texas. And It's basically, they describe it as like a school, kind of. She has a job there. She works.
She chooses not to leave.
Yes. So she's able to...
Every year they review her case.
They review it, and she's up for review, and she declines every year.
Yeah.
She
refuses the review. It's not even that she refuses she just doesn't
wants
even
to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like that's where she knows that she needs to be. And maybe she just feels like she's been successful there and, you know, treating mentally everything that she needs to be.
What's she going to do when she comes out? I mean, that would be my question because, you know, I just don't know where's the support going to be when she comes out. Her husband divorced her.
Yeah.
They're no longer married. Even though in the beginning of the trial, he actually 100% supported her. He actually blamed the doctors
Yeah.
He blamed her, mental illness on it. So he actually supported, he actually had the illusion that after all is said and done, that he would actually have more kids with her after the trial.
What makes you kind of wonder about him too.
Yeah. I mean, is he completely sane? So, because he wasn't able to accept the fact that this happened, 100%.
I think he also, like, when something like this happens, obviously, like, neither one of us have experienced this, like, with anybody that we know, but I feel like, when something like this happens, it's almost like I don't want to believe that this person is capable of this, and so it has to be something else, like, they're still a good person, so I feel like maybe he thought with, the proper help that she could,
with the medication and everything, she can get pregnant again.
That she can just get pregnant again and we can carry on with our life.
And have more children. Mm-hmm. And I think that has a lot to do with their religion as well.
Absolutely.
And you do look back a lot of the times on the person you fell in love with, and it's hard to just let that go.
Of course.
So...
but while I did read, while she was being treated by one of her doctors, Dr. Eileen Starbranch, she actually said that she found her to be among the 5 sickest patients that she's ever had.
With postpartum or just in
general?
In general. Wow.
Because I think she just suffered from so many things. And then, I mean, she was suffering from mental illness before she ever even had kids. And so you throw postpartum on top of that and the mix of all that.
Lack of sleep when you have kids.
Oh my God, you're waking up
5 kids under the age of 7.
I just can't. I just don't. I can't. My kids are almost 7 years apart, and that was hard. Yeah. I can't imagine having, one after the other, back to back, so close. Like that in itself is just, I can't,
Yeah.
It's draining. It's so hard. It's such a big responsibility, and
I just see everyone as victims in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, but I see, definitely, I mean, not even in a way, the children first and foremost. That was really hard for me to listen to, how they all passed away. And then with the husband, trying to get her help, and they kept discharging her. He's like, no, she's not ready.
The doctors did actually urge her to not have any more kids. But I mean, obviously they can only make a suggestion, but
do so much.
It's like, at what point, like,
and you can't make adults take medication. So when she stops it, I mean, she's an adult. You can't. Yeah.
So she's being told, take your medication, do not have any more kids. And people just don't listen when they're, like, it's just, I don't know. It's so hard, but I feel.
And you're fighting with the religious beliefs. So that's another aspect on top of it.
Yeah,
so
that can play such a huge part. And it's just so sad. I just feel like it was so many different things that, that kind of not made all this happen, but just went into play with all of this. There was just so many different levels and contributing factors to all of this. But she still is here in Texas.
I actually read that Rusty still keeps in touch with her. Mm-hmm. He calls her frequently, touches base with her.
And so does her attorney.
Yeah. So, and that he did remarry. He had another son, but he's now since divorced since 2017. Yeah. But it's just a lot of it's sad all the way around.
It is. And I think that she's where she needs to be, with obviously getting the treatment that she needs, and she will probably be there for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
But I think it's good that she has enough wherewithal to know that she needs to be there and is not trying to leave, because, how many people would just leave and walk out?
Yeah.
So
she understands. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the children are all buried here in Texas. And so we had the chance to visit
The cemetery.
yeah, and their gravesite is absolutely beautiful.
It's a beautiful tribute to the 5 children.
It really is. So, okay, well, thank you so much for listening, and we will be back next week from California again.
Yes.
All right. Well, have a good week, and we will catch you guys later.
Thank you.
Bye.
And follow us on 50 States of Madness on any podcast platform.
Yeah.
You know, our TikTok.
Patreon, if you want to help support.
Thank you so much to our Patrons. Absolutely.
Yes.
So who
But
support
we
us
are,
every week. But
50 States of Madness on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok.
have a safe week, you guys. Bye.